Hello everyone, welcome to the Ginger Snaps here. I'll be discussing horror movies with you guys in a very blunt way. I'm your host, Stephen Harrell, and in today's video, on this special Friday the 13th, I'm going to be reviewing for you guys Friday the 13th, which was released in 1980. For those of you who have been a fan of the channel for quite some time, you're probably asking yourself the exact same question, which is, haven't you already reviewed this movie before? And it's like, yes, I already have. Now, this was in the infancy of my actual YouTube channel where I had finally started doing movie reviews, and the first franchise I picked was Friday the 13th. It was leading up to the 40th anniversary of the first Friday the 13th film. Now, the sad truth is, in that video, I'm pretty much talking about the whole entire movie, left, right, and center, pretty much spoiling everything, and there was no edits, no cuts, no nothing. And there was a lot of ums and ahs and a lot of pausing here and there. And as soon as I started doing that with part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6, the videos practically started lasting even longer than before. And then, of course, I had the Jason character in there kind of intervening half the time after part 3. Now, when I got the Blu-ray set, I originally wanted to re-review the first 6 Friday the 13ths. And just for the longevity of the channel, I wanted to make sure I did a movie review of the Friday the 13th franchise every Friday the 13th. And since there's only 2 of them this year, that means there's only 2 Friday the 13th films to review this year. So as we all know, the Friday the 13th franchise is a film series that essentially has spawned over 12 sequels, a 1 crossover, a TV series that has nothing to do with the actual fucking films themselves, and has been kind of going through a legal battle. Well, now that legal battle is kind of over for rights issues and copyrights and all that kind of stuff, it's now about time we finally see another Friday the 13th film, a 13th Friday the 13th. But until that time, might as well watch the ones we have so far. And in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing for you guys, once again, the first Friday the 13th. So let's get into it. For the story of Friday the 13th, it's pretty much a bunch of camp counselors getting a camp ready for the summertime, and a lot of shit happens at that camp, and a lot of people die in that camp, and the killer is revealed. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. How is this successful? Well, you gotta remember, guys, back in the 80s and late 70s, horror movies were really busting out in the theaters. And Friday the 13th, even though it was supposed to be just a Halloween ripoff, ended up becoming such a hit with fans. Now, you guys gotta remember, Friday the 13th did something different that Halloween did. Halloween essentially is the killer comes to them in the town of Haddonfield, whereas the camp counselors come to Camp Crystal Lake, where the terror begins. This is one of those things where, you know, a lot of people love that for this franchise, and a lot of people absolutely love the story, especially for this first film. And it does stick, you know, I mean, like, when it comes to the actual story for this film, especially, it's one of the things that it's got that charm to it, you know, especially since, you know, this film and its sequels end up causing a lot of fucking imitators. Like, do you know how many fucking horror movies now exist that take place in a camp? How many fan films are made all because of the beginning of this film? Obviously means that story is very effective. And for this film, rightfully so. Friday the 13th story is a home run. Now, the one thing that actually is a real bummer when it comes to this franchise, other than Halloween, is its characters. I mean, see, Halloween actually has a lot of strong, independent characters that you can get behind as a fan. Friday the 13th went the different approach. They decided to just cast a bunch of young teens, and all they ever do is want to get drunk, get high, have sex, and just party. So you don't really get to gel and hang with one of those characters and get attached to them like you would for Halloween. Except for one character in this whole entire movie, Alice. And she's the good girl. She's the one that is there to, you know, just do the things that need to be done as a camp counselor, while the rest of them are just all fucking around at this rate, worrying about when's the next time they want to get high and when's the next chick they're gonna fuck. Now, of course, Friday the 13th, when it comes to those characters, it's the one thing where in the first film it's kind of established, you know, there's gotta be the final girl. There's gotta be that the protagonist and the antagonist. They have to have that camaraderie to actually fucking make this movie feel like it's important when it comes to the characters. But that was the shocker when it came to this film. A lot of the characters died. So when they did a sequel, it's like, well, all of our characters are dead. Now we have to kind of find new ones. But yeah, other than that, all the characters in this movie are all top notch, especially a very famous now Kevin Bacon. As everyone already knows, this movie was not his first film. He was in a National Lampoon's film, and then he got this film. And then all of a sudden, Footloose made him a fucking star. Now, I'm still waiting for Kevin Bacon to say something about Friday the 13th. I mean, we all know he does well in horror movies. So why the fuck is he just not saying shit about Friday the 13th? I don't know. It's about time you say something, Kevin. Oh, spoiler alert, if none of you guys who are actually new to the channel who's never heard of a Friday the 13th film, or maybe you have and haven't watched any of them, if you're going into this movie expecting fucking hockey mask boy over here, Jason, to be in it, you'd be sadly mistaken. Because as we all know as fans of the Friday the 13th franchise, we know that the first film, Jason wasn't in it. He wasn't the killer in this film. In fact, the killer in this movie is Pamela Voorhees, who is played by Betsy Palmer, the late Betsy Palmer. Now, she does a very well job as her character, the mother of Jason Voorhees, who is there to avenge her son's death. Hears her son's voice in her head, seeing images of him drowning at the lake, and she plays the part so damn well. There's only one problem with Betsy Palmer's portrayal in this movie. It's at the end. This film was marketed as practically a whodunit, and you didn't know who the killer was. The only time you knew the killer was around was Harry Manfredini's score. That's when you only knew. But you never got to see who the killer was. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, Betsy Palmer just shows up, and it's like, who's this chick? So for anyone like myself, when I first watched the first Friday the 13th as a young kid, I was a little shocked to see that Jason wasn't actually the killer in this movie. So, what do I think of Betsy Palmer? Well, as over the years, Betsy Palmer has had quite a nice, lasting legacy. It's a fucking absolute shame that she passed away and doesn't get to enjoy the fan experience anymore. So, with that being said, I mean, she still did well for her performance, even though she did think the script was, kind of a piece of shit. The other thing about Friday the 13th that felt a lot more different than Halloween was its kills. Now, of course, there's 2 kills in the beginning of the movie, and they're kind of just wishy-washy, just like whatever, nothing kills. A little bit of blood here and there. But then it gets to the good shit. We get to the gory shit. And how is that made famous? Well, we had a special effects guy named Tom Savini on the film. He was contributed as pretty much the best guy to do a film like this after his work with George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. So Sean S Cunningham hired Tom Savini and his protege as well. And we all know what has happened ever since. This film practically, Savini pretty much explains it to himself with everybody on the Blu-ray and all the other bonus features that, he was a photographer at war, and he saw a lot of shit. So if the gore he was making in a horror movie didn't look real to him, he wasn't going to do it. So a lot of the gore in this film, obviously, is due to the amazing mind of Tom Savini. It's a great addition. It's something vastly different than what Halloween had done. But of course, a lot of people were not very keen on all the violence in this film. Of course, a lot of people even said this is practically the pornography of horror movies. All the gore, all the kills, everything in this film. If anyone has to remember this film for just one kill, everyone already knows it is the Kevin Bacon death where he gets the arrow through the neck. And of course, everyone already knows Tasso's pump, the hose disconnected, and then, he just blew into it, which made the fucking effect of the blood spurting out. Now, for all the gore in this movie, it does kind of hold up, except on the Blu-ray. If you guys notice that some of the makeup, the skin tone is just not right, so you could tell that there's a prosthetic there. But nonetheless, even watching it on a VHS tape or even on DVD, it still looks good for the amount of time has passed ever since that effect has been made. But yeah, other than that, the kills are great. As for the climax of the movie, as we all already know, Mrs. Voorhees and Alice are fucking fighting on the beach when Alice decapitates her, killing Mrs. Voorhees. She sets sail on a boat in the middle of Crystal Lake. The police arrive. There's that Harry Manfredini fucking music that just gives you all that hope. And then... some fucking lake guy comes out of the water and drags her in. Yeah, sadly enough, it's pretty sad that this is the first image of Jason we see, like, without the flashbacks or anything. And it's pretty cool, and it was a very effective jump scare. The only problem with that jump scare is that it was a dream sequence, essentially. But, of course, with that being said, there is the one little shot which zooms in on the lake, and you see the ripples in the lake. And it's like, is someone in the lake? We don't know. But yeah, practically when it comes to that movie's shocker of an ending and jump scare, that's what makes this movie almost timeless. But then reality kind of sets in, especially if you're a Friday the 13th fan. When it comes to Friday the 13th score, a lot of people know that Friday the 13th doesn't really have specifically a score. If there was any score that is very synonymous with Friday the 13th, it is a simple syllable that is said throughout all the sequels, that is heard throughout all the fucking films. And that is simply... Now, I know there's a lot of people who sit there and say, no, it's not that. It is, it's that. Now, how that was done? Obviously simple. If you see a scene where Betsy Palmer is talking through with Jason's voice saying, kill her mommy, it's the K-I in kill and the M-A for mommy, and simple. It's just that simple sound effect. And a lot of people get it fucking wrong. But Harry Manfredini does make a few musical scores when it comes to the franchise, which is all good and nice and dandy. It's just, this film has a little bit with the next sequel, with the same kind of score. But that's the thing about this film. Every single film, when it comes to Harry Manfredini's brilliant score and soundtrack, it's all different. It's always never the same. You might have the same upbeat meadows and all the sounds and all that kind of shit, especially when like a chase scene happens or whatnot. But Friday the 13th's score, if a lot of people say what's their favorite ones, a lot of people do tend to say the first film. Now, personally, I don't say it's the first film's score that is my personal favorite, but still good nonetheless. Now, although the movie is one of the good ones of the franchise, and a lot of people do highly recommend watching it, and it's the one thing you gotta do when it comes to Friday the 13th. To a non-fan who's just getting into the franchise, but you know everything about Jason, this movie's not going to be your cup of tea. Now, I know there's a lot of people who do like a top ranking of their favorite films from worst to best and all that stuff, and Friday the 13th from 1980 somehow never does seem to crack the top 5. Why? Well, maybe that has something to do with some of the fans who came in and watched Friday the 13th after knowing who Jason was, watched the first film and realized Jason wasn't even in the fucking movie. Like, where is he? Who's this chick? But the thing about Friday the 13th is that even though it's supposed to be made as a Halloween ripoff and it became a success, the box office even showed that. Didn't matter what film critics had to say, because let's face it, Friday the 13th fans, we all had to fucking hear it. The film critics hated Friday the 13th. Hell, even fucking, they posted Betsy Palmer's address at one time in the fucking news article, and then just like, here, mail her your displeasure for Friday the 13th. Like, Roger Ebert, you're fucking weird. But yeah, other than that, when it comes to this movie, and with the franchise that we have, a lot of people do rank those other films a lot higher than Friday the 13th. And sadly, I'm like that as well. Friday the 13th, even though it's one of those things that you have to experience as a fan, and you get into it, this is the start of a franchise that you absolutely love, you kind of end up becoming bummed out by it, because a lot of the things that hurt this film is the character arcs that the characters themselves actually, they're not that impressive. Some of them are actually there just for the body count, right? And the body count in this movie is actually very low, right? It's only 10 kills. Now, the thing about this movie that also hurts it is the fact that, yeah, Jason's not in it, but also there's a lot of sequences where we're just focusing on a lot of things. Like, for example, why did we have to fucking focus on Alice making coffee? Why? Anywho, when it comes to this movie, it's a timeless classic, but the sad truth is there's a lot of films that are better than the first one. So, guys, for my rating, I'm going to give Friday the 13th from 1980 a 4.5 out of 10. So tell me, guys, what do you think of the first Friday the 13th film? Is it a film that still holds up to you, or is it a film that kind of loses itself within the franchise? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you also hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to hit that bell notification every time you want to get notified about all the other videos coming out on this channel. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. This has been the Ginger Snaps here. My name is Stephen Harrell. Happy Friday the 13th. Go enjoy some of those fucking Jason films, guys. And I'll talk to you later.